I do want to talk about a story that I think a lot of the right has been kind of tiptoeing around, and I cannot figure out why. And that is the newest tranche of Jeffrey Epstein, whatever, honestly. I don't really even care what it is because it is clearly something else that the libs are trying to turn your attention away from. But here's the thing. Is all of the information out that we want? No. And are we frustrated about that? Yeah, probably. But what this new thing is, or the information that I've gathered on it is just another attempt to obfuscate and to turn your head in a different direction when libs are taking a pounding, specifically in this case, because of the shutdown, the Schumer shutdown, as a lot of people call it. I like to say Shaco. Schumer always chickens out, because that's effectively what happened with this shutdown. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, but the libs got literally nothing from it. They just kind of upended the government for no particular reason and got zero from it. But because the PR around that was so bad and so terrible for libs, they got to think, what's the new shiny thing that we can point all of our allies in the media towards? Oh, I know, Epstein. What actually got released? Well, there's 3 emails out now from after Epstein was actually did his plea deal in federal courts. I think one's from like 2012, the other from like 2019. And basically, to me, it's a whole big nothing burger. Just to be transparent with what they say, Epstein apparently sent emails saying Trump is in on it, Trump knew something, Trump knew whatever. And that's effectively it. And what you then have is a guy who's incarcerated, especially in the 2019 emails, an incarcerated person trying to get the best outcome for himself, telling an author that the president of the United States, who has the power, I guess, to do something, knew this or knew that. What it comes down to is this, and we'll get to why they're actually doing it in just a sec. I consistently on this story, unless there is well, I'm not even going to say that. The last 4 years, you're telling me, if any of this is actually meaningful, what you then have to say is that the last 4 years during the Biden administration, none of this was able to come out. And only now that President Trump is in power, is there any new revelation coming to the forefront. Give me a break. If there actually was any there, everybody and their mother can guarantee you that the Biden administration, which, by the way, prosecuted President Trump erroneously, among other different prosecutorial squabbles that consisted on the left side of the aisle, those people, right, who decided they wanted to try and put President Trump in jail for 700 years, that wanted to prosecute him for crimes that weren't actually crimes, and we don't need to dig into the whole DA Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, ridiculous. I almost said a naughty word that I'm not allowed to say on the TV. Ridiculous is adequate, though. All of that stuff. You're telling me that they were okay with all of that, but no. The real career ender that it happens to exist in the Epstein files. We're not going to release that, even though we have 4 years to do that. All of that to be said. Therefore, if they didn't do it then, that has to lead me and you to believe that there really isn't anything there that is going to put President Trump in a bad situation. And so because of that, you have to look at the reasons as to why new emails from Jeffrey Epstein or in the Epstein files or whatever are now continuing to come out. And that is, I believe, because they need to turn your head in a different direction. Here's what I think is actually happening. I think there are publicly available a bunch of different things that tangentially tie so-and-so to so-and-so, and they're just holding on to it because, one, they know that releasing it won't actually do anything. It won't actually move the needle in any way, shape, or form. Two, it's not actually legally damaging. I think they're just sitting on it because they know it's for PR, which I think brings us to 3. They're using all of these things for PR. The emails that were sent, which again can be dismissed by the fact that you have a guy in prison talking to an author who clearly wants something in it for himself. To say that Jeffrey Epstein was not a clever person would be to mischaracterize him entirely. You've got a guy sending an email to an author trying to wiggle his way out of something by tarnishing the president of the United States. Effectively, yeah, it doesn't really qualify on the grounds of blackmail, but at a certain point, it's how are you going to take this serious? Of course, this guy is going to say anything he can to try and lighten his either prison sentence or just overall legal standing. Of course, he's going to say anything. Absolutely. And so then to say that these emails that have now been released have anything to do with anything is meaningless and ridiculous. What they are trying to do is distract. I think they have like a trove of these types of things kind of stored up, and anytime the libs have bad PR, as they have over the last week, again, the Schumer shutdown that didn't actually accomplish anything. At the very least, shutdowns are not necessarily the best way to get policy done, but at the very least, when conservatives shut down the government, they actually get something for their negotiations. President Trump, libs constantly hit President Trump of like, why Trump chickened out. No, he set the bar really, really high and then negotiated down to what he actually wanted. That's called negotiations. In this particular case, that didn't happen at all with the libs. They just didn't get anything for their troubles. They shut down the government for 40-something days, and nothing actually happened. They didn't get anything. Speaker Johnson said, well, yeah, they basically took the offer that was on the table 40-something days ago. This isn't really anything to write home about. But because there is tar on their face, egg on their face, and they are tarred, two different sayings that I accidentally conflated in my own head. Because they've got egg on their face in this particular instance, they think, okay, well, what do we have here that is going to divert attention away from how bad we are? We will do anything except for change our terrible and horrible ideas. And that is what libs are currently doing now. Interestingly enough, Representative Robert Garcia of California, the top lib on the Oversight Committee, in a statement said this: these latest, I'm using my scary voice because they're, again, trying to pretend that this is very scary. These latest emails and correspondence raise glaring questions about what else the White House is hiding and the nature of the relationship between Epstein and the president. Does it really? Does the fact that a guy who, again, was imprisoned trying to wiggle his way into some a minor bit of elevated scenario, does that actually say something that there are actually ties? Or is it a guy in prison trying to say anything he can to get out of the position that he's in? Also, there's this tweet from Congressman Swalwell that I'm not actually going to read, but it is a classic example of how libs couch things. There's always an out. There's always a no, I didn't actually say that, because he ends the tweet with a question mark, but clearly he's insinuating something that is disgusting and perverse. And again, I'm not going to read it here because it's not worthy of attention, except for the fact that it is a great example of, okay, if you were actually going to say something, why don't you go ahead and say it? All in all, this is what I think. I think that I think that if libs had an email of Epstein, or really of anybody contemptuous that they wanted to tar the president with, I don't know, so-and-so, bad person X said that Donald Duck is my favorite character in the Disney franchise. Ooh, Donald Duck, same name, Donald Trump. Therefore, this bad person is related to Donald Trump in this way. Therefore, Orange Man bad. I don't know if I need to do the hand gestures. I think you probably understand the messaging here. But the end of the day, what this is just another attempt to tar the president with a nothing, and to move the neck of people watching what's going on in politics away from their disastrous shutdown, collapse in negotiation, and on to something else that will continue the deep blue-haired lib orange man bad nonsense that they've been able to fool people with for far too long. Are we entirely satisfied with everything that's been going on regarding Epstein? No, absolutely not. I think I'll be the first person to tell you, yeah, there are some things that we would like to know, but this is a stretch. And because it is such a stretch, and because there's nothing actually there, the only conclusion that you can come to is, yeah, libs are just trying to wheel and deal and move the direction of the conversation in a different direction that makes them look less bad, because that's the only thing they're able to do. They're trying to push the media in a different direction so that they don't look like the dum-dums that they are. And speaking of the media, by the way, I just thought it was really interesting. I was following this story in real time. I was up very early to get on a plane to come here to Phoenix, and was following it in real time. And the first article that I saw, like right when it gets announced, that, oh, look at all of these emails. First thing I saw was an article from the New York Times, and I'm scrolling through the article from the New York Times. Remember, I subscribe to the New York Times to punish myself for my sins, and I do. I read the New York Times quite a bit, specifically so I can know what the libs are saying. And what I thought was fascinating about this story breaks, and within seconds, it seems, there's an article out by the New York Times. And not only an article, I'm scrolling, I'm reading, nothing groundbreaking in this article whatsoever, but I'm reading, and I start reading. This is a long article. The listen feature on it, generally speaking, if you have the New York Times app or any other news app, you probably have you can listen to this article. I wasn't listening, I was reading, but it was like 9 minutes. In other words, it's a pretty long article to come out immediately as this announcement is being made. And all that says to me, and I'm not necessarily making the accusation, I'm just putting it into, hey, this is really weird that this announcement gets made from Congress, and all of a sudden an article from the New York Times, the most important newspaper on the planet, is out immediately. If I were a betting man, maybe it appears the evidence suggests that maybe they had some foresight into what was coming down the pike, and that's not necessarily untoward by nature, but at the same time it feels like it gives some sort of evidence that the libs collude with the media on anything and everything that they do, and the compliant media does whatever the libs tell them they should do. Again, I have no evidence of that. This is just anecdotal, saying there's a really long article that came out really, really quickly. It sure does seem like there was some leakage, and by that I mean they said, hey, go ahead and this is what we're going to do tomorrow. If you could back us up on that, that would be super el gredo. My Spanish is not great. I'm not a lib, so el gredo is what you're going to have to sit with.